In our modern society anchored in materiality, whose main priority is owning the biggest car, the biggest house, the very last smartphone, or the best connected TV, non-visible concepts, intangible or non-concrete, are generally related to the rank of fantasy. Yet our oldest popular culture is full of tales of notions and precise descriptions of strange creatures that no one can claim to have seen nowadays, but yet everyone knows the characteristics. Unicorns, fairies, dragons and other leprechauns are therefore in the collective unconscious of simple fables, of myths or old imaginary stories created to entertain and make children dream. It is true that fighting a terrifying fire-breathing dragon or galloping on a majestic unicorn remains today the dream of many little blonde heads. However, just like the big ones, epics from ancient mythology such as the Odyssey of Ulysses, the 12 Labors of Hercule, where the legend of Gilgamesh are inspired by real events of characters of events, or indeed factual exploits, could we ask if our unicorn, fairies and other dragons could not be the unconscious vestiges of something that really existed? Could it be that what we consider today to be simple myth children's story is an origin factual, see a concrete reality? If the whole world continue today to talk about these legendary creatures is above all because the audiovisual industry has taken hold of the subject. It is true that the youngest generations are undoubtedly in awe of the adventures in cartoons, small mono-horn ponies or Deacon Doctor flying lizards, fire eaters. To better understand if these creatures mythological continuous possible factual sources, let's go back to the origins prophet that of unicorns and other dragons, register of these magical and extremely vague beings, and each region of the world has more or less its own category. We will therefore focus on three creatures, or rather three types of legendary creatures by gallantry. We will start with the creature certainly making young girls dream the most, unicorns, popularized in the West through Christianity and the first artistic representations in the locker room and other manuscripts dealing with paintings of these animals. Unicorns have already been featured for centuries in ancient Greece and Indian Sanskrit stories, music. During the Middle Ages was the concrete belief in this creature from a flourishing trade in unicorn horns. The virtues, supposed healing and purification of this apparent specific to this animal feed strayed across Europe until Renaissance. Music. The presence of unicorns in some translations of the Bible accentuate their veracity all the more and launch definitely in the collective mind as being indeed a creature, real symbol of purity and majesty, generally associated with the image of the female virginity. However, no concrete evidence of contact or capture of one of these beings has so far not been officially recorded. How explain while Asia as far as Europe via the Middle East, all the peoples mentioned represent, they perpetuate the belief in the existence of unicorns. Let us look at existing animals that can be closely or remotely related to the image of the unicorn, and having been able to propagate this belief over time, whether the appearance of this creature can vary over time from the white goat to the horse with a camp unique in the center of the background, sometimes was born in the image of the year's corn. A consensus general will retain the appearance of a terrestrial animal of the equine type, having a horn on the front of the head. Starting from these major characteristics, we can of course mention the rhino, whose unproven virtues of its unique horn have earned it the virtual extermination in just a few centuries. However, the purity and majesty proper to the image of the horns are not really representative of this pachyderm. In a completely different environment, the name of mother's unicorn is attributed to Gnarl Shrinivil, sporting a Munich horn and spirals, and on the front of head too, plus inevitable man's thinking of a unicorn. However, if this marine animal cannot explain the limited physical origin unicorns he has, despite himself contributed to his spread by trafficking his horn sold for centuries as proof material, is unmistakable of the existence of this legendary animal. But another creature could also be at the origin of the myth of unicorns, the Esotherian nicknamed giant unicorn. This prehistoric species, extinct 28,000 years ago, was a giant rhinoceros, no longer possessing a single shell on the bottom. If a priori living memory, no direct contact with these animals could give birth to the legend of unicorns. The discovery of bones relaxes the interior. Posing is awesome might have been imagined of those who unearthed the image of mysterious animals to a horn anyway. Even while looking well in all circles and even in different times, no animal seems to correspond to the modern representation of the unicorn, or at least not in our world physical and not on this level. Music. Concerning the mythicals of Aragon, the sources are much richer. We will note mainly two main types of dragon, the Oriental to the Asian and the West. These two somewhat different dragon morphotypes are still today extremely present in different human cultures. The oldest representation of dragon dates back to the 4th millennium BC in a Neolithic tomb in China. We could also noted the brick walls of the colossal Ishtar Gate in Babylon and 2,500-year-old Mesopotamia featuring a dragony creature. Make the morphological differences between Western and Eastern dragons are very easily noticed in the countries of Asia. These legendary creatures have a slender form of a snake with 4 clawed legs, usually with long whiskers of wooden horns or a mane. Although not having dragons of it, Asians, however, have the ability to steal. The Western type is more akin in appearance to a giant lizard armed in it and claws, usually possessing one lost. Also granting it the ability to fly. It is admitted for Western dragons to have the ability to be able to breathe fire, but this is not an obligation. But whatever the type of plane or whatever the place on the planet where it is mentioned and whatever the time, these legendary creatures are invariably of the reptilian type, that more like a slender snake or giant lizard. These mythical beings are generally the symbol of extremely strong value in Asia. Dragons are synonymous with power and protection, and they are also the image of the emperor in West. Whether in ancient Greece among the Celts or in mythology Nordic, dragons are associated with forces natural and destruction. We also note the notion of generally protection of a treasure or a place. Christianity for its part will offer the dragons a totally harmful image, assimilating him to Satan in the destruction and apocalypse. Concerning animals that may be at the origin of this 1,000-year-old myth, we will obviously note the dinosaurs. Although they have never been around directly, it could be possible that fossils were been found and that the size and appearance of these creatures and spawn the legend dragons. However, if today we can easily make a link between dinosaurs and reptiles, how to explain that people ancient or even Neolithic effect this rapprochement, and this all over the planet? If men have never directly seen dinosaurs of their eyes, there is indeed an Asian reptile that can be one of the sources of this legendary creature, the Komodo monitor, also called the Komodo dragon, and a lizard that can measure more than 3 meters long for more than 100 kilograms. If this giant lizard, Indonesia by its size and its apparent, could well have fueled the spread of the myth of dragons, however, it is unlikely that this will. The source, in particular because of its geographical distribution, is limited to islands in this region of the world, is apt to very late Western discovery in 1910. Another specific and culturally highly localized point may however still be raised in the Slovenian tradition. During the Grand Crus, the white salamanders, also called prochus, was expelled from the caves where it lived. The local inhabitants thought then that they were larvae of dragons and that adults lived in these places under the earth's crust. If this Slovenian anecdote is particularly interesting, we cannot not take it as the source of this myth, because the existence of dragons as being the parents of these larvae is already integrated into the unconscious of these peoples. It is therefore only a reference, very poetic, to this dragon legend. It would seem that no proof that they are material or cultural cannot explain the precise origins of this legendary creature. But does that mean, for as far as dragons do not exist, the last type of legendary creature that we are going to examine is certainly one of the most comprehensive facts. Main concern with this classification is a multitude of creatures can be attributed to it, can refer to it, and of course the facts in the strict sense. This little flying female creature, usually associated with the primary elements of nature and being mostly endowed with capacities that we could still today qualify as magical. But the order of facts also brings together a phenomenal number of different beings, so-called supernatural and totally dissimilar in nature. We can therefore include all the legendary little goblins, elves, gnomes, the proshan and other elves. But since this glossary of facts does not seems to have no limits, sirens, nymph, nature spirits and even sometimes the angels can be associated with the precise definition of this legendary creature represented worldwide. Therefore depends on the place and the time when it mentions it. In order to try to understand if these beings are purely imaginary, bullish, or were real, we will focus our view of the facts on the Western type from the official point of view. The ideological origin of the facts would have ancient beliefs, pagan religions, Historians, ethnologists and other folklorists claim that the shift from polytheistic beliefs to monotheism thus spawned a multitude of new creatures, supernatural associations consciously or not with the ancient deities. This logical and rational explanation perfectly explains the plurality of to be recognized as a fact as well as the multitude of strange abilities of function or power attributed to them. But what about the materiality of the facts of their potentially physical existence in our world? Where title of living species on our planet, there is unfortunately very few credible testimonials when she tells you encounter with these creatures and no known species could a priori and to be at the origin. It would seem therefore that the fact and neck and surround them either from intangible belief and the poetic vision of many novelists who have tried to bring a little magic to our Cartesian world, not very inclined to immateriality. Yet the facts and other small peoples of nature are chained in virtually all cultures of the planet and in almost all eras to believe that these creatures, if it does not exist official, are undoubtedly present on our planet and alongside men, since still without us being able to provide proof material. As you will understand, it seems almost impossible to prove the physical existence and its various legendary creatures, fairy, unicorns and other dragons, therefore left us traces only in our written artistic representations and our collective imagination. Even their cultural origins are still shrouded in mystery today and are still the subject of debate. Yet all these creatures but a common point. In fact, they are all linked to strong ideological and spiritual symbol of more. All of these beings belong to a universe with a world which, even if it seems very close to ours, not fully meet what we consider ourselves to be the standards physical, and it is precisely for this reason that we have them in the row of legendary imaginary creatures or mythic. We can therefore ask ourselves if our physical world, the one in which we let's all evolve every day, could be the only one. Obviously it would seem that not. If we look at the vision energy of the world, there would be different plans, different worlds in our world. In order to better understand this notion of plan, the best example of these superimposed worlds interacting with each other, the others concern everyone, since it is about the soul. If for many our physical existence is limited exclusively to our physical body, this carnal envelope made up of matter, of cells, the boat, even no one can deny the notion of a soul, this vital energy coming to breathe life in our body. With this specific example, we have interactions of two different planes, that of our physical body and that of our soul, which, that being immaterial, allows our carnal envelope to move from think of acting to create and therefore to live. Based on this observation, could imagine that other worlds, other planes, other vibrations, energy can exist, and why not interact with ours? One of the greatest scientists of our modern age, Albert Einstein, supposing that our universe was composed only of energy vibrating at different frequencies, vibrations of energetic frequencies would therefore generate physical matter, but also a set of other forms of energy. Why not? Vital can therefore be immaterial, but yet being part of this set that is our universe. To schematize extremely simply this vision of things, imagine our world being a malefical. All of this cake would be our universe, made up of several layers, itself representing the different planes at vibratory frequencies. All the layers of this malefical forms a whole, in this case the cake, and although it is not necessarily in direct contact and one with the besides, they are two by the whole. What form? According to this example, we would therefore be embodied in one of the sheets of this cake, that of materiality, where the vibratory frequency of energy allows to give birth to the physical world. In esotericism, its different planes are called and Eric vital or astral physical. According to this hypothesis, it would be perfectly possible that our legendary creatures, unicorn, dragons and other small people of nature, are in reality beings, other planes managing to interact with our own and with humanity. That there may be many reasons for this contact between shots, but try to list them would amount to hypothetical and to a hypothesis. However, we might suppose that these creatures possessed the ability to traverse the plans, to move from their own intangible world to ours, just as it would be possible that the set of different vibrations, this famous malefical, is interconnected by forms of intangible energy, enabling spirits, human beings, to their consciousness of succeeding under certain conditions contact with these mystical beings. Anyway, if the existence physical horns denial made, the other dragons cannot be proven materially speaking by bringing a horn, a claw or a wing of one of these creatures. Science and esotericism seem to agree, for let us glimpse the possibility of their existence, and if children are generally more receptive to this kind of legend and if there shows greater interest, perhaps it is only because they are not yet fully formatted and anchored in our material world, and that still has what we logical and Cartesian adults we call their soul of a child, but that these mythical and legendary creatures really exist, well, or whether it is just simple stories imagined by men. Their power over humanity is incontestable. It can never be supplanted by any form of material wealth, because fairy unicorns and other dragons offer us everything, just a little dream, music,